The woman in the red coat didn't see me. Or maybe she did and turned her head deliberately. I wasn't sure which option stung more. "Elena Moore," I murmured under my breath, not to introduce myself, but to remind myself I existed. I stood, still in the long, crowded economy boarding line, surrounded by coughing kids, tired tourists, and the smell of stale airport coffee. 2 rows over, in the priority lane, my entire family, mother, father, sister, and her 3 children, were laughing. Not casual chuckles, but full, relaxed, echoing joy. The kind you only hear on the way to somewhere beautiful, somewhere expensive. The kind you hear when the world has made space for you, when life has cushioned your every step. A child's voice broke the moment. "Mom, these seats are huge." It was Tyler, Vanessa's middle child. Loud, spoiled, oblivious. My father ruffled his hair. "That's what first class feels like, bud." I didn't move. My backpack hung heavy on one shoulder. My carry-on rolled slightly forward as if trying to escape the moment for me. "We still feel bad we couldn't bring Elena," my mother said with a smile that wasn't even trying to be discreet. Vanessa's reply came sharp and instant. She wouldn't have fit in. Everyone laughed, and I finally understood something I had been too tired to see for years. They hadn't forgotten me. They had erased me. 3 days earlier, I had sat across from my mother at her kitchen table. The wallpaper behind her still curled, at the edges, the same as when I was 10. She stirred her tea, eyes low, voice high. "You know, sweetheart, Vanessa's kids are growing fast. They've never been to Maui. It's hard with the expenses, but we'll make it happen." I didn't ask why I wasn't included. I didn't need to. Her hand reached across the table to squeeze mine. "I wish we could do something special for you too, Elena. Maybe next year." I nodded. Said it was fine. They always said next year. But here I was, 3 days later, watching them waltz into first class, coordinated in matching vacation outfits, my sister's baby strapped to her chest in a designer carrier I had unknowingly paid for 6 months ago. The memory stung. Vanessa had called crying about medical bills. "We just can't catch a break, Ellie. Can you help with the deductible?" It wasn't for the deductible. It was for extra legroom and complimentary champagne. Didn't cry. I didn't speak. I boarded my plane to Portugal in silence. My seat didn't recline. The man next to me snored through the entire Atlantic crossing. But I barely noticed. I was rearranging history in my mind, piece by piece. There was a photo. In my parents' hallway I'd passed hundreds of times. Vanessa's wedding. She glowed in white. My parents beamed. The frame was gold-trimmed. I stood at the far edge of the image, half-shadowed, holding someone's purse. I'd never noticed it before. Or maybe I had and forced myself to forget. My trip to Portugal was meant to be an escape. It became an awakening. I ate alone in a cobblestone courtyard the 3rd night. A young woman approached my table and asked if I was waiting for someone. "No," I said. "I'm not." I meant more than just dinner. I returned to the US 10 days later and didn't message anyone. The silence was surgical, precise, and it sliced faster than any accusation ever could. By day 4, my mother called. Voicemail. "Hi, honey. Hope you had a great trip. We're just a little tight this month. Could you help with the car payment? Just this once." By day 6, Vanessa texted, "Hey, random Q? Do you still have that credit card you used for Lily's piano lessons? I need to register her for the spring term." I ignored it. On day 7, my father called. I answered. "You're being dramatic," he said. "You weren't even supposed to be at the airport. This is ridiculous." I wasn't supposed to. See the truth? A beat. Then, "That's not what I meant." "No, Dad. It's exactly what you meant." I hung up. That night, I opened my email. Vanessa had sent me a forwarded receipt for a luxury resort in Maui, booked under her name. Paid in full 2 weeks before they told me they couldn't afford to include me. Attached was a note. Can you take a look and see if the price looks fair? Just making sure they didn't overcharge us. She sent it to the wrong Elena. Wasn't even the first person in her mind. I was just the financial advisor who'd stopped answering her calls. I didn't reply. Instead, I revisited my bank records. 7 years. That's how long I had been quietly funding my family's fantasies. From braces to ballet shoes, emergency loans that were never repaid, temporary Venmo requests from my parents that conveniently aligned with Vanessa's spa weekends. They had trained me well, not to question, not to need, not to exist. But here's the thing about quiet people. We observe. We remember. We plan. 2. Weeks later, I sent a package. It contained every receipt, every bank transfer, every screenshot, every lie. I didn't send it to Vanessa. I sent it to Derek, and I didn't need to wait long. The fallout began subtly. A shift in Vanessa's social posts. No more beach views, no new handbags. Comments turned off. Then I got a message. Not from Vanessa, not from my parents. From Derek. It read, "We need to talk." I never replied, not because I didn't want to, but because the game had just started, and I had no intention of playing it the old way. Let them wonder what I'll do next. Let them scramble. Let them learn what it means to build an empire on someone else's silence, and then lose it the moment she starts speaking. The first message. Arrived before I had even unpacked. Hope your trip was relaxing. We're just a little tight this month. Think you could help cover the electricity? Just until your dad's bonus clears. Mom, always starting with warmth, a sugar shell around the same old request. I didn't respond. The second came that night, from Vanessa. Hey sis, Lily's piano teacher wants the full semester paid up front now. Super annoying. Can I send you her info? Still no reply. I placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter and watched the espresso machine hiss as it finished a pour. The one I had bought for myself in Lisbon. One indulgence. One selfish thing. Paid for entirely without anyone else's needs attached to it. The silence I offered them was not accidental. It was curated. I wanted them to feel it, not as absence, but as imbalance. Because for the first time in years, the scale had tipped, and they were the ones left holding the weight. Day 3. Dad called. Your mother's worried, he said, skipping the pleasantries. About what? You haven't checked in. You're not answering your sister. That's not like you. No, I thought. It's not like the version of me you taught yourselves to rely on. That version is gone. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. Well, take some rest. And if you can spot your mother a few bucks this month, that'd be a good start. That line stuck with me. A few bucks. As if it had never been thousands. As if I hadn't paid off their AC replacement, the kid's orthodontist, the vet bills for a dog I had never even met. I ended the call. Quickly. That evening, I turned off notifications from all of them. It wasn't an act of rebellion. It was the first move in a game they didn't know I'd finally started playing. 4 days later, my mother showed up, unannounced. I recognized the sound of her car before I saw it. Tires pulling too sharply into the curb like always. She didn't knock gently. She pounded. Urgency in every hit. Elena, I know you're home. Your car's right there. I didn't open the door. Instead, I waited. After a few minutes, she slid an envelope through the mail slot. No note, just a printed spreadsheet, their budget. Highlighted red in several areas. Mortgage, groceries, gas. At the bottom, circled in blue pen, still waiting on Elena's usual. The page fluttered slightly as the door caught a breeze from beneath. That was the moment my silence hardened. They weren't just waiting for a check. They were expecting it, entitled to it. as if my income had always been a shared asset. As if my ability to live simply wasn't a lifestyle but a resource they could borrow against. The next morning, I sent one text to my mother, "I'm not doing this anymore." No reply. That night, Vanessa called. "Elena, what the hell is going on? I think you already know. You're seriously mad about the trip?" I said nothing. "You weren't even supposed to see us. We didn't plan it to hurt you." "You didn't have to plan it. You just had to live exactly as you always have." She laughed, cold, defensive. "God, you're being so dramatic." "I'm being deliberate. You think this proves something? That you're suddenly above us?" "No," I said, calm as a winter lake. "I think it proves I finally know where I stand." She started to argue again, but I ended the call. The next day, I received a message that made my stomach turn, not for its content, but for its sender. Derek Short, professional. "Elena, would you be willing to provide a breakdown of the money you've loaned Vanessa over the past 2 years? I need it for our financial records." For our records. There was no pretense, no softness, just a man trying to account for what had, until now, been invisible to him. I sent him the spreadsheet I'd kept, not because I wanted to expose Vanessa, but because I wanted clarity to spread like rot. A day passed, then 2. No calls, no texts, on. Day 3. I walked past my old storage bin, searching for a forgotten winter coat, and found something else instead. A birthday card. Unopened. From 3 years ago. From my mother. I opened it, finally. Inside was a single sentence. "You're such a blessing to our family." It had once comforted me. Now I saw it differently. Not a compliment, a label, a weapon. Because what they called a blessing was just another way of saying, "We expect you to give and expect nothing in return." On day 4, my father called again. I picked up this time. "Enough," he said. "You've made your point." "I haven't made any point, Dad. I've made a choice." He sighed. "This is cruel. Your mother cries every night." She cried when Vanessa failed a math test. Once. "I don't recall any tears when I was denied a college scholarship because you forgot to mail the paperwork." Silence. That was a long time ago. But the pattern wasn't. Another sigh. Then, "We're a family, Elena. We help each other." "No, I helped. You collected." There was a long pause. Then something in his voice shifted. Something lower, less practiced. "We've depended on you more than we should have." That surprised me, but I didn't let it show. "Why didn't you ever say that before?" I asked. "Because you never made us feel like we had to." That stunned me in a different way. Not because it was kind, but because it was true. I had taught them how to treat me, by never asking for anything, never pushing back, always filling the gaps before they were even noticed. I had built my own prison, brick by careful brick, with the mortar of quiet compliance. But now I was tearing it down. "You're going to have to figure things out," I said. "Without me." I heard him inhale. Then I hung up. That night, I sat in bed scrolling through old messages. A thread from Vanessa caught my eye. 2 years back. Her asking for help with Lily's school trip. I had responded within 10 minutes. "Of course," I'd written. "Always happy to help." A sentence so gentle, so deadly, because it had laid the groundwork for all the rest. But not anymore. The next morning, I opened a new bank account. Private. No family access, no connected Venmo, no shared transactions, and for the first time in years, my paycheck was mine, entirely mine. And the silence I gave them? It wasn't a punishment. It was protection, for me. And whether they learned to survive it, or were crushed beneath the weight of it, was no longer my concern. Because I hadn't turned cold. I had turned free. It was a Tuesday when the knock came. Not The kind of knock you mistake for a delivery, or a neighbor being polite. No, this one was urgent, heavy, familiar in its entitlement. I waited. 30 seconds. Then came the second round, faster, sharper. I already knew who it was. Vanessa. I opened the door slowly, not out of hesitation, but control. She stood there, in a long beige trench coat that still smelled like wealth. Her makeup was perfect, but her posture wasn't. Something in her eyes was fractured, even if the rest of her tried to hold form. "Hi," she said, like it was casual. Like it hadn't been 3 weeks of silence from my end. Like she hadn't boarded first class while I stood behind a barrier. "You drove 2 hours without calling?" I asked. "I figured you'd ignore me anyway." She walked past me without permission, like she always had, into my living room. She sat, crossed her legs, adjusted her coat like she was in control. I stood by the door. "So," she said, "Mom and Dad are falling apart." I didn't reply. "They're behind on everything. Mortgage, car, utilities. Derek and I have been helping, but it's too much." Still, I didn't speak. "You think cutting us off teaches some kind of lesson?" she asked. "Because all it's doing is making things worse for everyone." I looked at her, looked through her. And then I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Not for her. Just for me. When I returned, I said, "I'm not teaching anyone anything. I'm just done." Vanessa's mouth tightened. "You sound proud of that." "No. I sound free." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Elena. You're not some martyr. You didn't do all this out of love. You did it to feel needed." That one almost landed. Almost. But I didn't flinch. "Do you need something?" I asked. That's when she dropped it. The real. "Reason for the visit. They're asking if you can cover just the mortgage this month. That's all." "That's not all?" I said. "That's never all." Vanessa didn't deny it. She stood, walked to the bookshelf, ran her hand along the spines of novels she'd never asked to borrow. Then she turned to me. "I get it," she said, quieter now. "You've always been the one who kept everything afloat. I've seen the receipts. I've seen the bank transfers. I know." That surprised me. For a second, I thought she might finally be facing something real. But then she added, "But you never said no, Elena. You can't act like a victim. Now." There it was. "I said no now," I replied. "That's the only answer that ever mattered." A long silence settled between us. And then I watched something shift in her, panic, dressed in false calm. "You know what this is really about?" she said. "You're mad we didn't invite you." I didn't blink. "You think we all plotted to exclude you. But the truth is, we didn't think you'd want to come. You always act like you're above it." "Above what?" I asked. "Your children calling me ATM auntie? Mom texting me only when a bill's due? Dad pretending moral superiority while never lifting a finger?" Vanessa looked stung, but not sorry. "You could have said something." "I did," I said. "Every time I paid without protest, that was me saying something. You just didn't listen." She paced now, the trench coat opening slightly to reveal a tailored navy dress. Her luxury, her armor. "Derek's furious," she said. "Not with you, with me? He didn't know. I kept telling him we were doing fine. He's just now realizing how much I've given to cover for them." "I didn't ask you to. You made it necessary when you vanished." "No," I corrected. "I just stopped being convenient." Then came her final card, the one she thought would crack me open. "Tyler asked where you've been. He said you're the only one who remembers his birthday every year." I nearly laughed. Not because it wasn't true, but because it was her who reminded me every year, with a passive-aggressive calendar invite. "Don't forget your nephew, like last time." She was hoping sentiment would do what shame couldn't. "I'm not coming." "Back?" I said. She stared. Not surprised, just scared. but she had one more line to try, and it was the one that exposed everything. You don't get to abandon us just because we expected more of you. Expected, not hoped, not appreciated, expected. And that was it. The unintentional confession. The thing I'd been dancing around for years. They saw me as an obligation with a wallet, not a daughter, not a sister, a fallback plan. I didn't abandon you, I said. You built your lives around me, then pretended I wasn't there. Vanessa's mask cracked then, not with tears, but with rage. Fine, she snapped. Don't help, but don't come crawling back when you realize what a mistake this is. I walked to the door, opened it. I won't, I said, and I meant. Had she left, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I stood in the silence afterward, letting it sink into the walls, into my bones. Then I walked to my desk and opened a drawer. Inside, a folded piece of paper. One of the first bills I ever paid on their behalf. A hospital invoice, Vanessa's signature at the bottom. I had kept it. Not out of sentiment, but because it had been the first time she'd said thank you. I turned it over, written faintly in pencil. Just until things get better. 12 years ago, I burned it in the sink and watched the smoke rise like truth. From a lie. It began with a birthday photo. Vanessa posted it 3 days after she stormed out of my apartment. Her youngest, Lily, was turning 6. There was a unicorn cake, a backyard balloon arch, a princess for a day tiara that probably cost more than my entire grocery run that week. They had the party at my parents' house. Every detail was curated, for maximum online adoration. The comments flooded in. What a beautiful family. Vanessa, you do it all. Your parents are the sweetest, no mention of me. Not even the usual, wish Aunt Elena were there. From Mom. Because this year they had stopped pretending, and oddly, that made it easier. I watched it all from the cold distance of my apartment, legs tucked under a fleece blanket, coffee untouched. I scrolled past each filtered photo without flinching, but the message came that night, from my mother. Elena, sweetheart, it's not right that we haven't spoken. You're missed. A single sentence, soft, sweet, strategic. I didn't respond. The next morning, she doubled down. I just want to talk. No pressure, no guilt, just talk. She signed it, Love Mom. As if that word hadn't long ago become currency in our family, a term of transaction, not affection. Still, curiosity itched. I dialed. She picked up before the first ring finished. Elena, thank God. I've been so worried. You've been hosting birthday parties. A pause. Well, yes, but you weren't answering. We didn't think you'd want to come. You didn't ask. Silence. Then, you always hate big gatherings. That wasn't an excuse. It was a verdict. As if my discomfort had justified my exclusion. She sighed theatrically. I know things have been tense, but you're still part of this family. I was never part of the performance, I replied. That caught her off guard. The edge in my voice wasn't rage. It was truth. And truth in our family was an unwelcome guest. She tried to pivot. Vanessa is really struggling. Derek's traveling more? The kids are acting out. It's a lot. It always is. For her. She's carrying more than you know. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. And I carried more than anyone ever asked. There was a long pause. Then, in a voice so low it almost sounded honest, we didn't know how much we were asking. No apology, just a statement of miscalculation. I hung up without a word. That evening, I opened a dusty box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were cards, Mother's Day, Christmas, a few birthdays, all from Vanessa, all with the same handwriting, same template kindness. But as I sorted through them, I noticed something odd. Every card from the last 5 years bore identical phrasing. Thanks for being there for us. We love you. Us, not I love you. It was a quiet thing, a background detail, but it confirmed something I hadn't wanted to admit. They hadn't written those cards individually, they were printed, bought in bulk, signed by one person for the family. A single gesture, copied and sent out like mass-produced empathy. I flipped one of the envelopes over. Vanessa's handwriting, yes, but inside the flap was a return address I didn't recognize. It wasn't hers. I Googled it, a mailing service. Outsourced cards. A small business that sold family gratitude packages for busy moms who didn't have time to personalize everything. She hadn't written those cards at all. She had paid someone else to pretend they cared. I sat in that realization for a long time. It wasn't the cost. It wasn't the fakeness. It was the strategy. Because Vanessa didn't just forget me. She had automated her love. That night, I received a package. From Derek, a manila envelope, hand-addressed. Inside was a note. I found this in Vanessa's office. I don't know what's real anymore. You deserve to. There were photocopies, emails, spreadsheets, an account of every dollar I'd given. Not just my direct payments, but reimbursements she had taken credit for. Vanessa had been pretending to pay for our parents' needs, covering expenses and presenting herself as the generous one. But behind the scenes, she had funneled it all from me, then passed it off as her own kindness. One email read, "Don't worry, Mom. I told Elena she was helping with Lily's trip. I already used her transfer to cover Dad's car repair. Just act grateful if she asks." Another, "If I get Elena to cover the summer camp, we can move our Hawaii budget up." It wasn't just betrayal, it was coordination, an entire system, built on silence, trust, and the assumption that I would never dig deep enough to see it. But now I had. I stared at the documents for an hour. Then I lit a match, not to destroy them, but to ignite something else. I printed copies, sealed them, and sent them. One to my mother, one to my father. No note, just truth. Let them sit with it. Let them see the scaffolding they had never questioned, the daughter they had never seen fully. The next morning, my phone lit up. 20 missed calls, 5 voicemails, all from my mother. I didn't listen. Instead, I made myself breakfast. Poached eggs, toast, fresh fruit. It tasted like justice. Around noon, a final message appeared. From Vanessa. "You think you've won something? You think Derek knowing changes anything?" No greeting, no apology, just venom. But then came the line that cut through everything. "Don't forget who gave you family when you had nothing." And suddenly, I remembered. She was right. She had given me a version of family, curated, conditional, calculated, and now I was giving it back, all of it. Every brittle thread, every staged smile returned to sender with interest. The first sign came through a third party. A mutual acquaintance from my old job sent me a message on LinkedIn. We hadn't spoken in over a year, which made her note all the more curious. "Hey, Elena, not sure if it's my place, but I bumped into Derek at the pharmacy. He seemed off. Mentioned Vanessa's been under pressure. Something about family finances falling apart?" I stared at the screen, unmoving. Not because I was shocked, but because it was finally beginning. The second sign was even quieter, an automated alert from a credit monitoring service I'd forgotten I still subscribed to. My name hadn't been used, but the address it flagged was familiar. My parents, a hard inquiry, a rejected loan application. They were trying to open another line of credit, and for the first time, they hadn't used my name. They'd burned that bridge too thoroughly. The collapse had begun, not with fireworks but with bureaucratic failure. Then came the voicemail from my father. He hadn't called since our last conversation, and his voice was thinner this time, less rehearsed, more breath than words. "Elena, We didn't want to worry you. It's just temporary. We've missed a few payments. Nothing major, but if there's anything you could do, just to help us stay afloat." He didn't even bother with the usual warm-up, just straight to the ask. I deleted the voicemail. The next day, a package arrived, from Vanessa. No note, just documents. Bank statements, utility bills, an overdue notice from the mortgage company, red-stamped final warning. Slipped between them was a photo. The family at Christmas last year. Me standing behind the couch, half cut out of the frame. Everyone else laughing, holding matching mugs of cider. A gesture meant to guilt me. Instead, it gave me clarity. Because I remembered that day, Vanessa had forgotten to tell me about the matching outfits. When I showed up, my mother took one look at my plain sweater and said, "Don't you have anything festive?" She had said it while pouring cider I had bought, beside lights I had hung. I put the photo down, walked to the sink, and dropped it in the trash. That evening, I received a text from Derek. No preamble. "Can we talk?" I replied with a time and place. A neutral cafe downtown. Somewhere public. Controlled. He arrived early, wore the same strained look I'd seen, only once before, at his wedding, when Vanessa had made them delay dinner for a second round of portraits. His smile then was tight. His smile now was non-existent. He sat without ordering anything. "Elena," he said. "I don't know where to start." I stayed silent. He continued. "I found the records. The ones you sent. I compared them to the bank activity. She's been hiding a lot." I nodded once. "I thought we were managing our household," he said. "Turns out we were outsourcing it, to you." "That's generous," I said. "She wasn't outsourcing. She was laundering." He flinched, but didn't disagree. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't deserve that." I let the words hang, because for the first time, someone in that family acknowledged it. No excuses, no gaslighting, just truth. But then Derek leaned in. "She told me you offered," he said. "That you were the one who insisted on helping. That she tried to stop you, and there it was. I didn't react, because I had expected it. She said you guilted her," he added. "That you made her feel like a bad mother if she didn't accept your help. A calculated reversal, benevolence weaponized into manipulation." Looked him in the eye. "And what do you believe?" I asked. "I believed her," he admitted, "until I saw the timestamps, the overlaps. She told you Dad's car broke down, but the money went to the resort deposit. She said Lily needed braces. There's no orthodontist on record. She said she was paying the electric bill, but I found a receipt for a massage retreat. And now?" He hesitated. Then, "Now I'm wondering if I ever knew the woman I married." There was nothing I needed to say. He wasn't there for me. He was there because his world was unraveling, and for once, I wasn't the one holding the thread. The next day, Vanessa called. She didn't ask if I was free. She launched straight. Derek's threatening to separate finances. He's saying he might freeze the joint account. And you need to fix this. That stopped me. I need to? Yes, she snapped. You dragged him into this with your petty little expose. You don't know what you've done. I know exactly what I've done. You think you've won? No, I said. I think I've stopped losing. She was breathing heavily now. He doesn't understand how things work in this family. No, I said. He understands now. A beat of silence, then she tried a different tactic. We've all made mistakes. Elena, I've covered for Mom and Dad too. You don't see everything. You're right, I said. I only see what's been stolen. She tried again. I've done more for this family than anyone. That's why it's falling apart without me, I replied. She laughed bitterly. You're proud of that? No, I said. But I'm not ashamed anymore. That night I slept deeply. No dreams, no tension in my jaw. No racing thoughts, because for the first time, the burden wasn't mine. They were carrying it, and it was breaking them. The package arrived in a plain brown envelope. No return address, no markings beyond my name written in stiff block letters. Not my mother's handwriting. Not Vanessa's either. For a moment I considered tossing it into the trash without opening it. But instinct, sharp, cold, and honed from decades of conditioning, told me otherwise. I sliced it open with the edge of my keys. Inside, photographs. Dozens, glossy prints, worn at the corners. All of them from my childhood. I recognized them instantly. Pictures from birthday parties, school events, holidays. Except in every photo I was off-center. Cropped, blurred, cut out entirely in some. Vanessa front and center, always. In one, she's blowing out candles on a pink frosted cake, the kind I remember picking up for her on the way home from my part-time job in high school. In the background, my arm, just the arm, holding a tray of drinks. No face, no mention. In another, a family portrait at a lake house. I remember standing behind the camera. Vanessa was holding the clicker, but the caption my mom wrote on the back read, "Our whole world, all together." Except I wasn't in. At the bottom of the envelope was a single handwritten note. 5 words, written in my father's terse utilitarian style. "Sorry I never framed you." I stared at those words for longer than I care to admit, because on the surface they sounded like regret. But I knew better. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. He wasn't sorry he didn't include me. He was sorry I noticed. That night, I took the photos and spread them across the floor of my living room. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet you feel in your teeth. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and my own breath, steady and shallow. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. I was documenting, categorizing, like a crime scene investigator building the timeline. And then I found it. A photo I had never seen before. Me, at 16, sitting on the porch steps, holding a notebook. In the corner, barely visible, a reflection in the window behind me. Vanessa, standing inside, looking out. Not at me, but at my notebook. And suddenly I remembered. That summer, I'd submitted an essay to a local writing contest. It had been deeply personal, about growing up invisible in a house full of loud love for someone else. I never heard back from the contest organizers. I assumed I wasn't good enough, until now, because next to that photo in the envelope was a clipping from the town paper, an article titled, "Young Voice Captures the Heart of a Town." The name at the top, Vanessa Moore. The essay, mine word. For word. My stomach turned, not with nausea, but with understanding. It hadn't started with money. It had started with voice, with theft of identity, with a long, slow erasure that was never random. Vanessa hadn't just leaned on me financially. She had harvested everything, my generosity, my silence, and apparently my talent. She had always been the reflection, not the source. I took a photo of the newspaper clipping, sent it to Derek, and typed only one line. Ask her where she got. This. No response that night. None the next day. On the 3rd day, he called. "She said she found it in a drawer," he said, voice clipped. "In my handwriting?" I asked. "She says she adapted it." "She didn't adapt it," I said. "She stole it." A long pause. Then he said, "I believe you." He wasn't the person I needed to hear it from, but it would do. That evening, I received another message, this one from my mother. "Elena, I saw what you sent. That essay. I had no idea. I'm shocked. It was a lie. I knew it because the photo of Vanessa holding the award for that contest had been framed on their mantle for years. I had dusted around it every Thanksgiving. She knew. She just didn't think I'd remember. I didn't respond. Instead, I drafted a letter. Not to them, to the editor of the same paper. I sent them a scanned copy of the original handwritten essay, my notebook page, and the clipping that bore Vanessa's name. I didn't ask for a retraction. I didn't demand justice. I just included a single sentence. Your archives contain a theft. I signed it with my full name, Elena Catherine Moore, and for the first time in my life, it felt like it meant something. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I picked up. Elena? The voice was soft, male, older. This is Paul Simmons. I used to be the editor at the River County Herald. I saw your letter. He paused. I want you to know. I remember that essay. I remember how moved I was by it. I was surprised when Vanessa came in to claim the prize. She didn't seem like the person who'd written it. And you gave it to her anyway? I had no proof, he said. And your name wasn't on it. Just the Moore family address. It's haunted me for years. Now it haunted Vanessa, because when the current editorial board published a short correction of historical record, the following week it didn't name names, but it quoted a line from the essay. A line only I could have written. I was the pause in the family's music. The part no one notices but the one that gives the song its breath. I watched the post go live. I didn't share it. Didn't comment. I didn't need to, because for once, the world saw me, without me having to explain myself. And as for Vanessa, her silence said everything. No calls, no texts, no more packages, just absence, which, in our family, was the closest thing to accountability. It was raining when Vanessa showed up at my door again. No call this time, no pretext, just thunder in the way, distance and the rapid knock of someone who knew she was on borrowed time. I opened the door, but said nothing. She stood there soaked, not just from the storm, but from something deeper. Not desperation, humiliation. It hung off her like her drenched coat. She stepped inside, uninvited again. The air between us was taut, brittle. I didn't offer her a towel. She sat down slowly, like the weight she carried was no longer metaphorical. I told them the truth, she said. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. Which truth? She looked up sharply. About you, about the money, the essay, all of it. And what did they say? Dad said it was in the past. Mom cried, said she felt betrayed. I let the silence fill the room again. Because what else could she say? That she was sorry? That she meant none of it? The debt wasn't financial anymore. It was moral. And it was years overdue. They don't get it, she added. They still think you're being cruel. I'm not, I said. I'm just done. I know. Her voice cracked, not like it used to when she was manipulating. This time it fractured on its own. Then she said something I didn't expect. Derek left. I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I already knew. I had seen his car disappear from their driveway days ago. The silence after had been louder than any argument. He took the kids to his mother's for the weekend. Said he needed space. Vanessa's hands were shaking, just slightly. She looked down at them like they belonged to someone else. I can't fix it, she whispered. No, I agreed. You can't. A pause. Then she looked up. I was jealous of you, she said. I raised an eyebrow. She continued. You had peace. I had attention. And I hated you for it. I tilted my head. You mean you hated that I didn't need the spotlight to feel real? She nodded. They never saw me unless I performed, unless I was their star. You could disappear and still be whole. That hit deeper than I expected. Not because it was flattering, but because it was finally honest. I used you, she said, voice small. Not just for the money. For the narrative. for the version of myself I wanted them to see. And now? I asked. Now I don't even know who I am without their praise. That was her real crisis. Not the debt, not the broken marriage, but the silence, the absence of applause. I didn't offer comfort. Instead, I asked, "So what are you going to do?" She hesitated, then said, "I've been looking at jobs, real ones, not just the brand consultant thing Mom brags about." "For the first time?" I said, a little too sharply. "No," she said. "For the first time without expecting someone else to catch me if I fall." I studied her, the way her shoulders curved forward, the way her gaze darted toward the floor. She looked like someone halfway between repentance and realization, but I wasn't naive enough to believe that meant redemption. Then she said something that almost caught me off guard. "I know you'll never forgive me, and I'm not asking you to. But I had to say it." I walked to the table, sat across from her. "You said you told them the truth." She nodded. "I don't believe you." She flinched, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folded letter. She slid it across the table. "I wrote it, printed copies for Mom and Dad, told them to read it or lose me too. I didn't pick it up. Not yet. I didn't do it for you," she added. "I did it because I realized I've been building a life on stolen parts, and none of it was mine." I finally picked up the letter, skimmed it. She had named every lie, every manipulation, even the essay. "They won't accept this," I said. "I know. Then why do it?" She met my eyes for the first time. "Because I need to stop lying to myself." That line stayed with me, long after she left. Long after the door clicked shut behind her and the storm outside softened into a whisper. I didn't call my parents, didn't acknowledge the letter. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened a file on my laptop. The manuscript, my story, my name on the cover. No more erasure, no more ghostwriting my life for someone else. I had been the quiet one, the helper, the background blur. But now, I was the author, and I was finally writing in ink. It wasn't the silence that surprised me. It was how long it lasted. Weeks passed, no calls, no messages, not even the usual passive-aggressive forwarded emails from my mother with subject lines like "families stick together" or "forgiveness is strength." I thought they'd come back louder. They came back invisible. At first, it unsettled me. There's a certain rhythm you get used to when you've spent your life being exploited. The cycle of giving, guilt, resentment, and reconciliation. They weren't just absent from my phone, they were absent from my bloodstream, like I'd been cut off from a toxin I'd learned to mistake for blood. The peace wasn't loud, it was surgical. I started waking up without dread pressing against my ribs. My meals didn't come with side orders of shame. My money stayed in my account. For the first time in years, I bought something without checking if there was an unspoken crisis I needed to save for. I bought a chair. Just one. No guests in mind. No extra seat to offer anyone. It was soft, deep green velvet, perfect for curling up with a book. The kind of indulgence no one else would understand but me. The kind of choice that didn't need anyone else's permission. I started writing again. Not journaling. Not notes. Writing. The story had been sitting inside me like a bruise that never healed. Now it was a blueprint. I began documenting everything. Not just the betrayal, but the silence. The way it wrapped around me, not like loneliness, but armor. Didn't think anyone would read it. That's why it mattered. Then came the email. Subject line, "Your words hit me like a brick." No sender name I recognized. Just an address, claire.stevensfentonpress.com. The body was short. "Elena, I stumbled onto your blog by accident. A friend sent it to me thinking it was anonymous. It wasn't. I recognized your voice immediately. You should write a book. If you're interested, I'd like to talk. Claire. I reread it 5 times before responding. We set up a call the next day. Her voice was calm, clipped, professional. Nothing like the performative interest I was used to. "You don't have to make it dramatic," she said. "Just tell the truth, and don't flinch." I could do that. I'd been doing it alone for years. That same evening, I received a single-line text from my mother. "I read what you wrote. No greeting. No punctuation. Just impact." Then another. "You made us sound like villains." I didn't respond, because I hadn't made them sound. Like anything, they had simply revealed themselves. Days later, my father tried. "Your mother's heart is broken. No mention of mine. No mention of all the years mine had been shattered in silence and expected to function anyway." I ignored it. But what I didn't ignore, what I couldn't ignore, was what came next. A private message from someone I hadn't heard from since high school. Jenna, a girl who used to come over for sleepovers with Vanessa. She had always been quiet, observant, awkward in the way people are when they don't quite belong in the curated chaos of a golden child's world. She sent a screenshot, a group chat, not just Vanessa's friends. My mother was in it too. The messages were about me, about the blog, about the embarrassment, about how Elena's playing the victim again. One line from my mother. She was always so fragile. Everything was a slight. And from Vanessa. She doesn't want healing. She wants a stage. I stared at it for a long time, not because I was shocked, but because I finally saw the blueprint. They hadn't abandoned me. They had weaponized the absence. They weren't staying quiet out of shame. They were building a story, one where I was unhinged, bitter, and hell-bent on destruction. They were playing the long game, rewriting the narrative before mine ever hit shelves. But what they hadn't accounted for was the fact that I wasn't playing anymore. I was publishing. That weekend, the story went live. Fenton Press ran an early excerpt of the manuscript, just 3 paragraphs. It opened with a single line. "I was the daughter who paid for everything, including her own erasure." It spread faster than I expected. Within 48 hours, I had a flood of emails, strangers, survivors, people who had been the invisible sibling, the emotional mule, the one who paid in silence while everyone else performed in comfort. But not a word from Vanessa, until Tuesday. She showed up at my building's front desk, demanding to be let in. The doorman, who had read the excerpt apparently, called me first. "There's a woman here. Says she's your sister. She looks heated." I told him to send her away. He did. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A voice memo. "You're destroying this family," she said. "And for what? Attention? Revenge? You got what you wanted. So why keep going?" That was the question that told me everything, because I hadn't gotten what I wanted. What I wanted was never revenge. It was recognition. What I wanted was never destruction. It was to stop being the scaffolding for someone else's performance. What I wanted was mine, and I had it now. Peace, solitude, a chair made only for me, a book with my name on the cover, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes walking away isn't retreat. It's the first step in rewriting everything. The day my book hit number 3 on the nonfiction charts, I was alone in my apartment, wearing sweatpants and eating cold pasta straight from the container. There was no champagne. No celebration. Just a steady humming silence that had finally become mine. Fenton Press had scheduled an interview with a major online outlet that morning. It went live by noon. By evening, my inbox was imploding with speaking requests, panel, invitations, and podcast pitches. But none of it surprised me. Not because I'd expected success, but because I had already stopped needing it. What I wanted wasn't applause. It was air. And for the first time in decades, I could breathe without asking permission. Vanessa had sent me another voice memo the day before, just static and one line. You really did it. You really walked away. I didn't answer, because that was the point. She wasn't the audience anymore. None of them were. Later that night, a padded envelope arrived. No return address. Inside, a photograph. It was old, pre-digital. A birthday party at our parents' house, balloons, a sheet cake, Vanessa in the center, arms thrown wide in front of a mountain of gifts, and me, in the corner. Half out of frame, holding a torn box of markers I had clearly already opened. On the back of the photo, in rushed pen, you. We're always watching. I'm sorry I never noticed. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. It didn't change anything, didn't erase the years. But I put it in a drawer, not out of sentiment, but as evidence. Evidence that sometimes even ghosts want to be seen. The next week, I spoke on a stage in front of 800 women. It was a conference about boundaries, burnout, and the invisible labor we carry in families that pretend to love unconditionally. I told my story, not the version they sanitized in group texts, not the one dressed up with motherly concern or sisterly confusion, the version where love came with a bill and silence came with interest. Afterward, a woman came up to me, mid-40s, glasses, steady eyes, trembling fingers. I was the Elena in my family, she said. I nodded. We didn't need to say more, because we always recognize each other. We're the ones who held the rope while everyone else climbed. We're the ones who stayed quiet so the house wouldn't shake. We're the ones who finally let go. Not out of rage, out of clarity, out of survival, out of the revolutionary act of refusing to disappear one more time. So here's what I learned. If you have to earn love, it's not love. If you have to fund your place at the table, you don't belong at that table. If your voice only matters when it's convenient, raise it anyway. Especially then. I am not the villain in their story. I am the author of my own. And to anyone watching this who feels invisible, invaluable, or quietly drowning beneath the weight of being the strong one, I see you. I was you. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep anyone warm. Not again, not ever. Your silence doesn't protect them. It buries you. So write, speak, walk away, reclaim, build, not out of vengeance, out of truth. And if you've come this far in the story, thank you. This channel tells the kind of stories that hit deep, that stay with you. So if this moved you, even just a little, subscribe, share. Help us keep telling the truths that too many people are afraid to name. We're just getting started.